Lamborghini Countach Quattrovalve, Ferrari 550 Barchetta, Ferrari 308 Fiberglass, Lotus Elan Sprint, Lamborghini Espada, Lancia Integrale Evo 2, Pagani Zonda C12S, Maserati Gran Turismo 4.7S and a Renault Clio. So why have I got a Renault Clio in this car collection of mine? Well, this is no ordinary Clio because this is the Renaultsport 182 Clio Trophy, to give its full name. And it's the hot hatch, I think, that beats all other hot hatches, and I'll try and explain why. Renault have a real history in making some fantastic hot hatches. You think back to the mid-90s, they came out with a Clio Williams, a superstar hot hatch, about 147 horsepower, and it really set the standard. Then they upped it again in the late 90s with a Clio 172, developed again, they did a cup chassis on that car, and then they upped it in 2001 by introducing the Clio 182 that had a facelift at the front, and they gained that horsepower by just further tweaking on the engine. They put a fantastic race manifold on the back of it to get the horsepower up, and they sold bucket loads of them. They were cheap, they were quick, and they were just hugely popular in the early 2000s. And then as the final run-out model, they did the Clio Trophy, which is this car here. And it's extra special. There's 500 right-hand drive versions of them, but then the Swiss found out that we were getting them all, and they said, oh, we want some. So they produced 50 for Switzerland as well. So what makes the Trophy so special over a Clio 182? Well, I'll take you around some of the details now. Well, the most obvious difference is the colour. All Clio Trophies came in this unique red, capsian red. It looks okay in this colour. In a way, I'm slightly disappointed they didn't go with the original idea was to make them all, they were going to be white, but then they chickened out and made it this red. But it's distinctive colour and looks pretty cool. Other differences are it has a spoiler, rear spoiler off the Clio V6, and down there it says Trophy, which is a bit of a giveaway that this is a Renault Trophy. Other differences, another unique wheel design, and these are Speedline. These are actually a higher spec than most Clio 182s. They're lighter weight, they're 1.3 kilos lighter on each corner, so that's significant saving. Move down inside, you get unique Recaro seats, which make a huge difference because they're mounted 10 mil lower than a normal 182, and it's always been a bit of a complaint with a little Clio that you sat too high in it, but this helps 10 mil lower with the seats. They actually get rid of the original seat in the back and they put this lightweight bench seat in the back. You lose the climate control as well. You just ordinary controls for the ventilation and fan speed. There's no problem there. Then at the front we have plastic wings. They're actually on all Renaultsport Clios, but it's just, you know, it's quite fun that it's obviously lightweight. It's beautiful finish. I'm not sure why more car manufacturers don't do it. And then you get ordinary headlights rather than xenons, because then you can throw away all the headlight washer kit, so you save a bit more weight there. But it's what's hiding behind this front wheel. It's the damper systems on this car. I don't normally have to talk about dampers on a car, but these are really special. They've got Sachs remote reservoir racing dampers on the Clio Trophy. They were hugely expensive. They're 10 times more expensive than a standard damper. Super trick, but for me to show them, I've got to take the wheel off, so I'll do that now. There we go, I'll take that off, and there we go. That is the Sachs racing damper that's unique to the Trophy, and you recognise it by being a bit special because this extra cylinder here, it's known as the remote reservoir, because what's basically going on with a damper, it's like a bicycle pump, and you have this chrome shaft going up, joined at the top, but the thing is, on a front wheel drive car, there's a huge amount of forces going through this shaft here when you're cornering. And if you get real load on the front wheels as you're going full tilt around a corner, it can actually stick in the damper. So what they've done on here is make this shaft absolutely massive. It's 25 mil on the Clio Trophy on these special dampers. And this bit's full of oil where the shaft goes in, but there's no room for the oil when you have a great big shaft. So you have a remote reservoir like this that then takes all the oil from the giant damper like this. And it means, from a driving point of view, you get perfect control of the wheels right through the corner. It doesn't matter how much load's going through the front wheels, with these sort of dampers, perfect control. That's why they use them in race cars. It's these identical shocks on this that you'll find on a touring car, British touring car or something like that. So they're really special. The slight downside is you have to get them rebuilt because don't take salt and grime very well, but they make the Clio Trophy really special. Finally, at the rear of my car, there's a slight tweak I've made because it's got twin bore exhaust, so that's standard on all 182s, but I've gone for the Scorpion RS 192 setup that gives a bit more sound and also some extra horsepower. And it's a system that works a treat, as we'll see later on the road. But the eagle-eyed among you might notice this number plate, and you might recognise it because if we wind the clock back to 2005, our Car of the Year issue, this very car was in that issue. And in those days we used to do two parts to our Car of the Year, and we had one part which was what we termed the real world. And we went up to Scotland with a group of cars, and what came out on top but a little Clio trophy. There is this car. The next week we went out to do the Surreal Car of the Year, and that meant driving it all the way out to Route Napoleon, where the poor little Clio got up against cars like the Ford GT, Ferrari F430, Gallardo was there, M3 CS. There was some super hot stuff there that year. So what are you going to do with a little Clio trophy amongst that lot? Well, what happens is you come third. And it was during that test, there was one particular moment, I was in this car, and behind me was Dickie Meaden in a Lamborghini Gallardo Superleggera. And we were going up just off the Route Napoleon, and we were meant to be doing these shots through the hairpins. And I kept noticing Dickie wasn't quite keeping up, and I knew he had someone in the car, so oh, they're talking. So I hung back, and it went far off again for the camera up this road. And we got to the top, and I said to Dickie, what happened? And he says, oh, no, I couldn't keep up. I couldn't believe the speed this thing would dive into the hairpins, just all on three wheels, nip round the corner, and it was off again. I could just about catch it on straight, and then another corner, and you were off again. So at that moment, I phoned up Renault in the UK and said, I'm going to buy a car. Well, which one? The Clio trophy I'm sitting in now. And that's how it happened. So as soon as we'd done that test, seeing it against Lamborghini, I just had to own this little car. And that was back in October 2005, and I've had it ever since. And when it got delivered, the managing director of Renault actually sent me a letter saying, thank you very much for flashing the checkbook in our direction, and how he sold 500 of the little blighters, as he described it, without any advertising, because everybody just wanted one. Wished it was so easy to sell other sorts of car. So there's a little bit of Evo history of this car as well. But the most important thing about this car is the way it drives. You haven't quite got Route Napoleon here, but we've got some ace back roads around here I know really well. So let's go and see it in action. The great thing with a Clio like this, it might be the ultimate version of the trophy, but you still get all the toys. And we've got air conditioning, which on today, which the readout I think it's saying 31 degrees, is pretty useful. You even get things like cruise control, which I don't think we're going to be using today. It's worth just discussing what makes a hot hatch, because there's various definitions, and the car that's generally accepted that started it is the original Golf GTI in the mid-70s. Here was a car that basically was designed to do your shopping and everything, you know, a general car would do. But someone had the bright idea of putting a bigger engine in it, giving it a load of horsepower, lowering the suspension, slightly wider wheels, and hey presto, you've got this performance car that could do everything, and obviously proved really popular. And when I look at hot hatch, I think the most important thing, it has to be really small. It's got to have a big engine, and it's got to have ample horsepower, sort of over-engined. The more over-engined, the better. And I think it almost can go before the Golf GTI. And if you look at the original Mini Cooper, that for me was original hot hatch. Yes, it didn't have the hatchback, but the hatchback doesn't actually make it's not the most important thing to be a hot hatch. It's that dynamic behaviour, that really compact size, and an exterior that doesn't really give away that it's a true performance car. It really needs to be that you're not sure if it's the Vickers Clio that parks outside the rectory every day, or whether it's the Boy Racer version. That makes the perfect hot hatch. It's a performance car in disguise for me. But the thing about this little Clio trophy is it doesn't weigh much. It is the lightest version of the 182 at 1,070 kilos all up. Pretty light for a hot hatch like this. The newer car, the 197, that was drifting to 1,170 kilos, something like that. So it's a good 100 and some kilos lighter than the next generation Clio. And you feel that weight everywhere. Everything is just that much more responsive. And it just gives it this instant sort of terrier feel, and I just can't help but drive this thing like a tit. Renault worked with Michelin with this car, the 182, and they actually developed a Pacific tyre for this model. It's called the Michelin Exacto, and it just hangs on forever. You just dial into any corner, hoof round, and just rely on that tyre just hanging on. It might be on 3 wheels, but oh, it's brilliant fun. This little Clio's only got 19,000 miles on it, so it leaves a fairly pampered life. But when I first got it, I actually run it every day, and it was just before, that's a jump back there, just before the 197 came out, and Renault gave me one of those to run straight after, and it was fascinating comparing the two. 197 had a great chassis, had a bigger footprint than the Trophy, but it just didn't feel quite as alive as this. The weight had gone up, it had electric steering, and the only way they could keep the performance almost comparable was by fitting really short gearing, so you thought you were really going quite quick, and then you got back in the Trophy and it was this instantaneous power. You just touch the throttle and it's just off, and that was sort of lacking in the 197. It was all to do with just that little bit heavier. Had none of this sort of feel that you just want to rag it everywhere. The other great thing about the Trophy are the brakes. They never seem to give up. Then you can just lean on them right into the corner, and it has the most, well, has it got an ESP or not? I don't know, but it never really flashes, never really intervenes. You can turn it off, but there's no real point, because you never notice if it's working or not. It's just such fun. And the Scorpion RS192 exhaust, it has an extra rasp to it that was sort of missing in the standard car. I have to say, it's one mod that's definitely worth making to your Clio. It's great that we're actually seeing a resurgence in the hot hatch. Renault come out with a new version of Clio with a paddle shift gearbox. We've got a Peugeot 208 GTI that's a whole lot better than we expected. And then Ford have really taken it on, and with the new Fiesta ST. And I think it's the closest, really, sort of the start of the debate, what's the greatest hot hatch again? And I like the Fiesta ST, but the thing is it's turbocharged. And for me, the ultimate hot hatch has to be normally aspirated, because you get that instantaneous throttle response like this. And the power to weight, this car, 1,070 kilos, as I said before, 182 horsepower, probably this exhaust is about 192, 195. That's over 170 horsepower per tonne. In old money, that's the same as a Sierra Cosworth, and it's about the same as a Lotus Elise. So this is, properly powerful for its size, and it's that much tinier than the Fiesta. The Fiesta holds its ace because being turbo, it's going to be very easy to tweak it. And I heard Mountune are already coming out with a kit for it, 215 horsepower. But really, the greatest hot hatch, many people think it's the 205 GTI 1.9. Well, I had one of those, and it didn't feel as electric as this. Yes, it was a bit lighter, but this is more power, more dynamic than the 205. The little Peugeot 106, again, really quick and dynamic, but it's just over 100 horsepower, and it doesn't have that power to weight that this has that can really take on the big boys. We go back to Route Napoleon. A little Clio taking on a Lamborghini Gallardo, that has to be something pretty special. And for me, the Clio Trophy is the zenith for the hot hatch. I don't mind trying out other hot hatches just to check that it is on the top of the pile, but I will argue anyone, this is the definitive hot hatch Renault Clio Trophy.